This world is home to some truly strange and dangerous things. Fortunately, Adventure used their shields to protect everyone. With his shield raised, our hero bravely defends against a bizarre monster's attack. The creature seems surprised that its strike was blocked so easily, but the warrior holds his ground, gripping the shield with all his strength. Just then, one of his companions yells for him to get ready for an attack. The group's mages then come together to cast a powerful spell, and with a single command, they unleash a blast of fire upon their enemy. Once the dust settles, only the monster's hand remains on the ground. The team's archer lets out a sigh of relief and asks if everyone's alright. His companions celebrate their safety and the fact they even leveled up. The blonde guy then thanks Maron, saying it's great to have a tank on the team. But suddenly, the entire group's expression turns to shock as they tell the knight to stop. Maron simply ignores them, preparing his knife to do that thing again. He pulls out a razor-sharp blade to begin his work. The first thing he does is remove all the hair from the orc's limbs. Right after, he seasons and cooks the meat to get rid of the foul smell. Once the cut is ready, he slices it into several small pieces. Watching this, the archer complains that he'll never get used to such a gross sight. The girl asks why he eats it, but the mage points out that he tries to make it taste good. To finish the dish, he adds a small garnish for a special touch. And with a divine glow, the orc meat pasta is finally complete. But his companion still finds it disgusting, no matter how nice the plate looks. Paying no mind to her opinion, the protagonist peacefully eats his meal. Seeing him, his friend asks if monster food is actually tasty. He then offers some to the girl, who instantly recoils with a look of disgust. The knight thinks to himself that it's delicious, and the people here don't know what they're missing. He savors the taste of the juicy meat and the soft texture of the creamy pasta. His friends find it bizarre that he eats monsters with such a happy expression, calling him a weirdo. At that, the archer changes the subject, asking if they heard the news about the missing hero. The girl is startled and asks where they found him. He replies it was in the Tursan forest. The mage is shocked, having passed through there just the other day, and says he was a promising hero. Overhearing the conversation, our hero stops eating, lost in thought. He wonders just how strong the monster living in that dangerous forest must be. His friend remarks that Maron is probably just thinking about how he can eat that monster too. She then calls out to him, asking why he started eating monsters in the first place. The knight looks at them in silence, as if recalling something important. The story then flashes back 3 months to a small village in the south. People were gathered, discussing the stopped carts after a red boar appeared on the road. One of the villagers points to a wrecked cart, saying it's impossible to travel like this. A man arrives in town, his cart completely battered, showing just how dangerous the road has become. Because of this, no one can leave the village, and the townspeople are at a loss. An old man laments that he won't be able to see his son due to the monster blocking the path. Meanwhile, 2 merchants worry as their delivery deadline for a nobleman approaches. One of them is getting desperate. If the delivery is late, they'll be in big trouble with their client. At that moment, a man shouts from atop his cart that they won't be going anywhere for a while. He tells the protagonist he doesn't care and orders the knight to find another ride. Seeing this, one of the merchants draws his friend's attention to the helmeted warrior. He notes that the guy looks a bit ragged but seems incredibly strong at the same time. The other man then gets a brilliant idea and decides to hire the knight as their escort. He says they'll gather as many travelers as they can and ask the hero to wait a moment. The merchant named Maham introduces himself and then asks for our protagonist's name. Lying calmly in the cart, the young man introduces himself as Maron Glace. The other man thinks there's something off about him, suspecting he might be a deserter. But Maham doesn't care as long as he can handle the monsters on the road. The protagonist remains silent, listening to them talk without caring what they think. The scene then cuts to a dark forest, showing a pair of eyes filled with despair. Someone wonders why this happened while staring at a severed arm on the ground. He then discovers the body of the hero, who is brutally taken down in the forest. Horrified by the scene, the young man looks back with a face of pure panic. He trembles with fear at the terrible sight of the fallen hero in the dark woods. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise and sees a giant creature approaching from the shadows. With eyes wide in terror, he realizes there is nowhere to run, but he steels his resolve, determined to make it out of that forest alive. As he thinks about reaching a Dorama, a shadowy figure with red eyes watches him. Back in the present, Maham wakes Maron and apologizes, not realizing he was asleep. The protagonist says it's fine, and the merchant explains they were just chatting. They discuss their destinations, and Maham asks the knight where in Adorama he's headed. He replies he's going to see his family at the St. Rai's orphanage after a long time away. Another brawny passenger asks for the protagonist's level, noting that he looks powerful. The man explains that one's level, seen through the mind's window, indicates their strength. With great pride, he shows off his own level of 23 and encourages Maron to check his. The knight then opens his status screen, revealing his level to be 95. Seeing the absurdly high number, the 2 men fall backward in complete shock. Suddenly, the cart lurches to a halt, and the driver shouts that the monster is here. Something massive charges toward them, kicking up dust and destroying everything in its path. Then, the dreaded red boar appears before them, radiating a terrifying fury. The creature bears its sharp tusks and its multiple, hate-filled eyes. The strong man yells for everyone to prepare for battle and draw the monster's attention. But it's too late, the protagonist is already face to face with the red boar. Maron finds the beast strange but figures that, in the end, it's just a red boar. He then uses his appraisal skill and sees the creature as level 62. With that information, our hero decides this opponent is perfect for a little test. The knight draws his sword and calmly walks toward the beast. The strong man in the group is startled to see him advancing alone against the monster. Desperately, he yells out, asking if the guy has gone mad and wants to get taken out. But Maron ignores the warning, standing face to face with the charging red boar. The creature roars, ready to strike, but the protagonist simply waits for the right moment. In one swift motion, the knight swings his sword in a powerful upward arc. The red boar is instantly split in two, its remains sent flying everywhere. The protagonist lands gracefully as the two halves of the monster crash down behind him. He seems a bit confused, even surprised by the result of his own devastating attack. Witnessing the unbelievable scene, all the other travelers cry out in amazement. Even Maron is speechless, wondering if he was really the one who did that. He never imagined a single blow could cause so much damage, despite the level difference. The brawny man grabs him, shouting about how incredible it was that he sliced the beast in half. He then asks if Maron is an elf or a beastman, because he doesn't seem human. All the other passengers just stare at the knight in stunned silence. The big guy claps him on the back, saying that after a display of power like that, he needs to eat. He calls everyone over for a meal, but the protagonist just stares thoughtfully at his own hand. Later that night, the group sets up camp and gathers around the fire to eat. Two men discuss Maron, finding it odd that he always hides his face and wears such cheap gear. One of them jokes that his old sword might be a legendary treasure, and she tells him to go ask. The girl then calls for Maron, but realizes he's no longer in his spot. She and another companion are confused, as the knight was there just a second ago. Suddenly, they both look to the side and are utterly shocked by what they see. Maron was dragging the giant carcass of the red boar toward the camp. The girl yells at him, demanding to know why he brought it over, and he replies he wanted some meat. Furious, she orders the knight to take the disgusting creature back where he found it. A while later, everyone is eating a simple soup they prepared over the fire. A bald man complains he's lost his appetite and says to never bring monsters to the dinner table. The protagonist feels a bit awkward at their reaction, looking slightly downcast. Nevertheless, he brings the spoon to his helmet to try the soup they made, but upon tasting it, he has a strange reaction, as if he's choking on it. Another adventurer remarks that the soup is delicious, but Maron seems to hate the flavor. A blonde woman then chides her, saying it's a fine meal for people on the road. Seeing the knight's reaction, she asks if he really wanted to eat that thing from before. The woman adds that besides being gross, the monster could have been poisonous. She explains the rule is to take only what's needed from a monster and burn the rest immediately. The archer says he's also heading to a dorama, so he should eat even if he doesn't like it. The men shout for help, as they are completely unable to get the beast carcass to burn. Even with a torch, the monster's body simply refuses to catch fire. At this, the archer approaches and tells them to move aside, as she'll handle it herself. The protagonist is confused, wondering why they called an archer to light a fire. But suddenly, the girl summons a fireball in her hand using elemental magic. She then launches the spell at the red boar's carcass, which ignites instantly. Seeing this, our hero is quite surprised, not expecting such an ability. A companion comments on how useful magic is, and the woman agrees it's easy to learn. The girl stares at her hand, admiring the power of her fire magic. Maron then approaches and asks if she's from the magic tower, which confuses her. He explains that most mages come from there, but she replies irritably that she's an archer. The young woman says even non-mages can do it, but it takes about 3 years to learn. The knight remarks that basic magic is normal for adventurers and asks what era she's from. She grabs him by the shoulder and points toward the horizon, showing our hero something. Atop a hill, the woman points out the lights of a city twinkling in the night. The protagonist is stunned by the sight, having never seen anything like it before. He realizes they are magic stones used as streetlights and is thoroughly impressed. The girl explains it's rare in the countryside but quite common in the city. She adds that these days even children's toys are powered by magic. Maron observes the city from a distance, thinking how much time has passed, as it wasn't like this in his day. Near the fire, one of the men catches the scent of the roasting meat and wishes it were pork. His friend jokes that it would be perfect with a cold beer after a hard day's work. Meanwhile, the protagonist silently watches the monster's carcass burn in the fire. The next day, they finally reach a dorama and thank Maron for his invaluable help. The merchant shakes the knight's hand, expressing his deep gratitude for the protection. But our hero simply thanks them for everything with a somber and quiet expression. Watching the knight depart, the merchants wonder if he truly ate nothing during the trip. One of them recalls that the young man threw up everything he ate and ended up drinking only water. They worry it might be an illness, which is why he never removes his helmet. Maham then offers a bag of coins as a token of gratitude, but Maron says that wasn't part of the deal. The man insists it's the least he can do and bids him farewell, leaving the payment with the protagonist. Upon opening the cloth bag, our hero finds it's actually full of potatoes. He stands silently, looking at the unexpected gift, appearing somewhat moved. Next, the knight leaves the potatoes with a sleeping man nearby and continues on his way. He reflects that a lot has happened, but he's finally back in his hometown. Walking through the city, he notices the urban landscape seems very different from his memories. He then spots a bustling bakery and recognizes the place. From there, the protagonist knows that his destination is just around the next corner. The place he has considered his beloved and true home since he was a child. At last, he arrives at his destination, the Ria's orphanage, where he grew up with his family. But upon reaching the spot, he finds a toy store instead and is completely bewildered. He wonders if he took a wrong turn but feels certain the orphanage was right here. Suddenly, a man exits the shop and asks if the knight needs any help. The protagonist explains that this was the location of the St. Ria's orphanage and asks where it went. The owner replies that he's the second proprietor and has never heard of such a place. Maron insists the orphanage was here, but the man says he truly doesn't know it. Just then, an old man sitting nearby calls out to the hero and asks about the place. The man explains he's never seen it but heard it existed a very long time ago. The knight asks what he means, and the elder says he recalls a rumor. He then reveals that the orphanage burned down, leaving the protagonist stunned by the news. It turns out everything was destroyed during a terrible and violent dragon attack. The scene shifts to a memory of a dull life, devoid of dreams or happy moments. Amidst the emptiness, the only thing he could recall was the warmth of a dinner table, a warmth that came from his family, who had tragically passed on long before him. And so, in a deeply tragic manner, his first short life came to an end. He awakens to the sight of a fish mobile, wondering why the ceiling is so bright. Suddenly, two children peer down at him and excitedly shout that the baby is finally awake. One of them runs off to call their sister, while the other stays smiling at the newborn. He wonders what is happening, as his last memory was of a fatal accident. Just then, someone approaches and tells the boys not to shout and scare the baby. A person then gently picks him up and lifts him into the air. A smiling nun greets him with open arms, asking if he slept well. She tells him that from this day forward, the baby is part of the orphanage family. This was his first memory in this new world, the warmth of a family he no longer had. In another memory, we see a bag of coins being given as a donation to the orphanage. Now an adult, the protagonist hands over the money, but the nun says it isn't necessary. She worries, noting he just returned and is already leaving again, pushing himself too hard. Our hero smiles and reassures her it's an easy job, just clearing out a horde of goblins. The woman seems calmer but still appears a bit concerned about his mission. Before he departs, she asks the knight to make a very important promise. She asks him to come home before it's too late, promising to make his favorite pie. With a thumbs up, the young man vows he will return home safely. Back in the present, a nun leads him to a tree and asks if this is what he was looking for. She explains there were no survivors from the dragon attack, so the temple took over the site. The woman asks about his relationship to the departed, as no one ever visits the memorial. Without a word, the protagonist kneels before the tree in a sign of mourning and respect. The nun understands and apologizes, stepping away to give him some privacy. The knight remembers her promise, recalling how she assured him he would be back soon. With his hand on the plaque, he laments how she told him there was nothing to worry about. A single tear escapes from his helmet as he thinks about what might have been. He wonders if things would have turned out differently had he been there to fight the dragon. Heartbroken, he kneels in the pouring rain, clutching the memorial plaque. But he knows it's a question for which he will never have an answer. Now all that remains of his former family is this tree and the memorial plate. Two nuns watch him with concern. He has been there for several days without moving. They can only imagine the knight's pain and lament his profound loss. The protagonist remains motionless in the same spot, not stirring an inch. Taking pity on him, one of the nuns leaves a piece of bread nearby for him to eat. After leaving the food, she turns and silently walks away. Seeing the bread on the ground, our hero finally moves, picking it up with his hand. He then brings the food toward his helmet, attempting to eat something. But as he tastes the bread, a horrible flavor fills his mouth, and he finds it utterly disgusting. The knight remembers his curse. He can't eat anything because it all tastes awful to him. He wonders why he's the only one who feels this, as everyone else eats normally. Desolate, the young man thinks he can't even satisfy his own basic hunger. He has lost his family again and feels there's no longer any point in living. But suddenly, a powerful and unique aroma catches his attention. It wasn't meat, it was something far richer and more savory than any food he knew. At the scent, the protagonist's mouth begins to water uncontrollably. He rises to his feet and leaves the cemetery, following the delicious aroma. Guided by the scent, he walks through the city streets with a determined look on his face. The smell leads him into a dark, narrow alley between the neighborhood houses. Peeking around a corner, he hears people talking about burning monster bodies and the risk of a fine. One of them complains that it will be a problem if someone eats it thinking it's regular meat. But the other retorts that it isn't poisonous, and if he's so worried, he should just toss it. We see them burning a cart filled with the bodies of small monsters. Looking at the roasting monster flesh, the protagonist finds it incredibly appetizing. He suddenly dashes away, and the woman wonders if they've already burned that much. He then returns to the cemetery tree, an air of sadness and dejection about him. Sitting on the ground, the knight takes out his sharp knife to begin his work. With the monster meat in hand, he examines it for a moment before taking a bite. Then, without hesitation, the young man sinks his teeth into the piece of roasted meat. As he tastes the food, he is completely blown away by an explosion of flavor. A smile spreading across his face, the hero finally says that it is absolutely delicious. The taste is better than anything he has ever experienced in his entire life. The meat has a savory and slightly charred flavor that perfectly suits his palate. He feels the juices burst between his teeth with every single bite. It puts to shame all the other meals he couldn't even manage to swallow before. It's a taste that awakens his primal instincts as it goes down his throat. Suddenly, a strange mark appears on his hand while he's eating the meat. All at once, a sharp pain shoots through his hand and the mark begins to glow. With that, the protagonist collapses to the ground, writhing in agony, not understanding what's happening. Tears stream from his helmet as he sobs with a mix of pain and sorrow. He then apologizes to his family for being the only one who survived. But even weighed down by guilt, the young man decides he still wants to live. He clenches his fist and declares his desire to live like a human and eat delicious things. The knight wants to be happy, but he wonders if he truly deserves such a wish. The sunlight then breaks through the clouds, illuminating the cemetery and bringing a sense of hope. In that moment, a single green leaf drifts down and gently lands on his helmet. A glowing hand appears and touches his wound, as if trying to soothe his pain. The hero is startled by the sudden and mysterious touch he feels on his hand. Then the hand vanishes, leaving a green leaf where the mark had been. Sitting before the tree, the knight appears to have found a small measure of peace. He looks up toward the future with a newfound determination in his eyes. With his mouth still smudged with food, he seems to have finally embraced his new path. The young man then picks up his shield and bag, preparing to finally depart. He bids farewell to the tree, saying that it is now time for him to move on. The protagonist vows that this time he will not be late in returning home. He steps onto the city's cobblestone street, taking the first step of his journey, and so begins the secret gourmet life of our monster-eating hero. In the heart of Adorama stands an imposing tower, the Hexalum Adventurers Guild. All adventurers start their journeys at this renowned institution. The guild handles a variety of requests, from exploring dungeons to defeating monsters. They also manage every registered adventurer, but not just anyone can join. To register, one must pass a strength test against a training golem. Many adventurers try the challenge, but not all succeed. A hooded elf then steps up, preparing for his turn to face the test of strength. The golem takes its position, the target on its chest ready for the new challenger's strike. The young elf concentrates, winding up a punch with all his might. We see his focused expression and the pointed ears peeking out from under his green hood. He hits a score of 5,312, shattering the day's record. The elf celebrates his victory, having impressed everyone with his surprising power. People in the crowd comment that he took first place, even outdoing a massive warrior. Everyone wonders where a powerful newcomer like him came from. Another adventurer approaches to congratulate him, hoping to form a team. The elf is clearly annoyed by the man's forwardness in his proposal. The protagonist intervenes, but the elf furiously shouts not to be touched like that. Our hero scratches his head and apologizes, a bit embarrassed by the commotion. Suddenly, a Ratman official appears, scolding Maron for not having taken the test yet. The employee sighs in frustration, but the knight assures him he can pass with ease. The elf turns to our hero with a friendly smile and a kind expression. He then advises the protagonist to relax a little before taking his test. The young man explains that if the knight is tense, he won't perform at his best. With a thumbs up, he says that compatriots need to help each other and bids the hero farewell. Maron is confused, wondering what he meant by that strange word. An elven receptionist named Dahlia greets the new recruit who just passed the test. The blonde young man waves to her, offering a confident smile. She congratulates him on his first place score, but he brushes it off as nothing. The receptionist then hands the official adventure certificate to the young elf. He's shocked to see he's only ranked D, despite getting the highest score of the day. She explains that ranking up requires a proven track record, and he seems impatient. Wasting no time, the elf asks for a quest, and the receptionist scans the board. She finds two perfect options, one subjugation quest and one collection quest. The elf seems a bit frustrated with the choices, but decides to take both. However, the receptionist informs him that these quests require a group and can't be done alone. She explains the dungeon hasn't been cleared in a long time, so the monster population has grown. Due to the increased danger, all rank D adventurers must tackle this quest in a party. The elf Dahlia looks around irritably, now needing to find teammates. Nearby, a burly man lets out a loud and obnoxious laugh. Meanwhile, another adventurer looks completely bored, with nothing to do. Dahlia wonders who on earth he could team up with in a place like this. Suddenly, something massive flies past him and smashes into the guild's counter. The blonde elf is stunned by the sudden explosion and startled by the impact. A large piece of wood is sent flying, nearly hitting him. The receptionist shouts, asking if everyone is okay and if anyone was hurt. Dahlia confirms he's fine and asks what happened, but he doesn't seem well. They then spot the training golem lying on the floor amidst the wreckage of the counter. The elf can't figure out how the one-ton golem went flying like that. Through the settling dust, the protagonist appears, framed by a huge hole in the wall. He points at the fallen golem, looking a little embarrassed by the situation. The knight bows deeply and apologizes profusely for the damage he caused. The receptionist assures him it's alright since no one was injured and he didn't cheat. A man remarks he's never seen anything like it in all his years working there. Our hero offers to pay for the damages, and the receptionist begins to calculate the cost. She lists the wall repairs, broken furniture, the price of the golem, and lost business. With a smile, she presents the bill, 2 gold coins and 30 silver. The protagonist then checks his money pouch only to find it completely empty. He asks about the payment deadline, and she says he can pay at his convenience. But with a dark smile, she warns that the guild will take legal action if he takes too long. Now an official adventurer, he must work to pay off his massive debt. The elf approaches and offers to form a team, surprising our protagonist. With a wink, he says that compatriots should help each other in tough times like these. The knight is confused, wondering why the elf suddenly wants to team up with him. Using his appraisal skill, he sees that Dahlia is a level 36 elf archer. The blonde archer explains they're heading to the same place, but Maron is still wary of his kindness. The receptionist notes that their class combination is perfect for the mission. As a warrior and archer, the guild employee thinks the pair is ideal for the job. Our hero is concerned about this hastily formed team, but the elf points out they haven't even introduced themselves. The elf then extends his hand to the knight, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. The protagonist isn't thrilled but knows he needs to clear his debt as soon as possible. Seeing the receptionist's expectant smile, he feels the pressure and knows he has to accept. So, Maron shakes his hand and introduces himself to his new teammate. Dahlia smiles, saying they should give it their all on their first mission together. Our hero wanted to avoid parties, but he admits the elf seems quite capable. The receptionist then announces that the team has been successfully registered with the guild. But suddenly, the elf yanks his hand back as if he's been shocked. The protagonist asks what's wrong, and the blonde archer asks if he's really human. With wide, startled eyes, Dahlia repeats the question, looking terrified. The scene then shifts to a forest where Maron is carefully studying a map. They finally arrive at the entrance to the gargoyle dungeon to begin their mission. Dahlia complains that his companion is just standing there in front of the dungeon entrance. He mutters that he hates teaming up with humans, calling them a vulgar species. The protagonist reflects that elves are tall, beautiful, and also live for a very long time. He knows they were once enslaved, giving them a complicated history with humans. But he recalls that the guild receptionist hadn't treated him that way. A dark aura emanates from the dungeon, but the knight seems completely unfazed. The two then enter the structure, which resembles a haunted castle filled with gargoyles. Our hero remarks that it feels like a different world inside the dungeon. Suddenly, he spots several flying monsters and wonders if they are the mission's targets. The gremlins are level 18 and evolve into gargoyles as they mature. Dahlia tells the human to get out of his way and not interfere with the mission whatsoever. The protagonist turns and starts walking away, which seems to confuse the elf. The blonde archer yells at the knight not to ignore him, and our hero offers a justification. He calls Maron rude, but the protagonist replies that he is over 100 years old. The elf is left shocked and speechless by his new companion's revelation. Our hero suggests they stay out of each other's way and focus on their own tasks. He then continues walking, but the blonde archer tells him to prepare first. The knight explains that preparation is unnecessary since the gremlins are low level. Dahlia is taken aback, wondering if the human saw his stats and is actually stronger than him. Furious, the elf points an accusing finger, claiming the protagonist spied on his information. A gremlin flies past, its mouth full of sharp teeth with a massive tongue hanging out. Dahlia continues to shout that stealing information without permission is a breach of etiquette. He calls the knight shameless, his face contorted with pure rage. Suddenly, one of the monsters dives toward him, attacking with its giant mouth. Maron warns him to keep his voice down, as it's basic dungeon etiquette. With a single quick slash, the protagonist takes down several gremlins at once. The elf is splattered with the creature's fluids and gets annoyed by his companion's actions. The knight then confesses that he did see his information when they shook hands earlier. The blonde archer is shocked by the human's audacity, and our hero proposes a deal. He says if Dahlia despises him so much, they should just finish the quest and part ways. The elf is irritated by the suggestion and tells the knight not to hold him back in the fight. He tells the human to do his job, saying he'll handle the gargoyles on his own. From a distance, a gargoyle observes the pair, and the protagonist tells the elf to do as he wishes. In the blink of an eye, Maron defeats several gremlins and begins collecting their eyes. In mere seconds, he had already taken down 49 and was nearly finished. The knight figures 50 eyes should be enough to complete his part of the mission. He then glances over and sees Dahlia facing a level 21 gargoyle. The gargoyle is the evolved form of a gremlin, its entire body is hard as stone. The elf appears tired and winded as he prepares to battle the monsters. He then charges toward the beast, bow in hand, ready to attack the gargoyle. The protagonist watches Dahlia fight, thinking to himself that he probably won't perish. With that, he decides to prepare a meal while his companion fights alone. He wonders how to cook gremlin meat but quickly comes up with an idea. The monster resembles a frog, so he decides to prepare it in a similar way. He takes only the parts that seem edible but notes there isn't much meat. Since there isn't a lot to work with, he decides to make small skewers. To add some variety, he also decides to grill the creature's innards. The gremlin skewers are then placed over a makeshift fire to roast. And just like that, our hero's special dish is finally ready to eat. He thinks it doesn't look too bad for a first attempt and gets ready to taste it. The knight then takes a large bite of the freshly cooked gremlin skewer. He eats with enthusiasm, clearly enjoying the flavor of the monster meat. With a smile, he declares the food delicious and that monsters are indeed tasty. The flavor is more like duck than chicken, with a slightly spicy kick. Our hero thinks it would be even better with a dipping sauce. He continues to eat his skewer peacefully in the middle of the dark dungeon. Suddenly, a notification warns him that he's been poisoned and the knight collapses. He wonders what's happening and realizes he can't move his body. The protagonist understands that the spicy taste he'd enjoyed was actually poison. He panics, realizing he has no antidote to cure himself. Desperate, the protagonist cries out for an antidote, but then something clicks. He realizes the gremlin's own bodies must contain a natural neutralizer for the poison. With that, the knight rips the liver out of one of the monsters to eat it for a cure. It's a risky gamble, but he eats the raw organ, hoping to survive. A message then confirms that the poison has been successfully neutralized in his system. Relieved, the hero celebrates his survival, taking a deep breath and feeling much better. He scratches his head, thinking he was almost taken out by his own hunger. So that's why people don't eat monsters. It's not just because they're disgusting. Suddenly, Dali appears and is startled by the bizarre scene before him. He shouts, asking what on earth the knight is doing, his face a mask of panic. The elf finds him sitting on the floor, surrounded by monster parts and cooking pots. He calls humans barbarians but says he never imagined it could be this bad. The protagonist cuts him off, saying he knows elves are vegetarians. He adds that this doesn't give him the right to insult meat eaters, but the elf loses it. Dahlia exclaims that he's witnessing a nightmare and wants to go home immediately. He demands to know why Maron is still here when he's already finished his part of the quest. The knight explains that since they accepted the quest as a pair, they are both responsible. He also reminds him that the guild receptionist could get into trouble if something goes wrong. The elf is left speechless and flustered, knowing the human is absolutely right. Our hero then offers to help hunt the gargoyles so they can finish quickly. The elf insists he doesn't need a human's help, but the knight ignores him. Dahlia is confused by the pan in Maron's hand, wondering what he plans to do. The hero explains that he used to be a shield bearer and gets ready to fight. He uses his taunt ability, drawing the attention of all nearby monsters. Gremlins swarm toward him, their eyes glowing with rage and fury. Even distant gargoyles are drawn in by the knight's challenge. Dali is dumbfounded, wondering what a cooking pan has to do with being a shield bearer. He panics upon seeing the sheer number of monsters now heading their way. Taunt is the most iconic skill for shield bearers, used to protect their allies. Normally, the skill is used to draw enemies close, allowing the party to defend. The elf calls the protagonist insane for luring every creature in the dungeon. The knight explains that the ability is also effective for attracting flying monsters. But suddenly he realizes the skill seems more powerful than it used to be. He tosses the pan aside, deciding that's not his problem right now, and braces himself. Using his swordsmanship and martial arts skills, he boosts his damage and agility. The hero takes a stance, ready to face the approaching horde of monsters. Dahlia complains about the mess and decides to keep his distance to provide support. But he is suddenly left in awe by what happens next. In a flash, Maron defeats every single monster with breathtaking speed. The elf's jaw drops, and he mutters that this has to be some kind of joke. He thinks about how he struggled to hunt 5 gargoyles, and now Maron has wiped the floor with them. A blue aura surrounds the protagonist, and Dahlia wonders who this man really is. As they leave the dungeon, the elf asks the knight to wait a moment so they can talk. He asks if Maron is okay with splitting the reward, even though he did all the work. The protagonist says there's no need to change it, reminding him he wanted to finish quickly. With that, Dahlia thanks him for the help, still looking a bit sheepish about the situation. He turns away, embarrassed, unable to believe his companion's generosity. Suddenly, the elf hears a strange noise and motions for the knight to stop and listen. Our hero is surprised, admitting he didn't know elves' ears could move like that. Dahlia is shocked by the comment and spins around to scold the protagonist. But the knight ignores him and keeps walking, making the elf even more irritated. From atop a cliff, Dahlia spots a stop cart with 2 men and another elf. One of the men is yelling at the driver for not avoiding a deer, which delayed their trip. He then punches the elf in the face, calling him a useless, slow slave. The young elf cowers in fear, apologizing and begging him to stop. Dahlia is furious, remarking that this is exactly why he despises all humans. He shouts that humans preach about ending slavery while trafficking other races behind closed doors. With his bow drawn, the elf tells Maron to draw his weapon for some payback. But the knight asks why he should do that, leaving the elf completely stunned. He explains that they can't know if the elf is an illegal slave just by looking at him. Dahlia claims he heard them mention the black market, but the knight suggests just reporting them. Disappointed, the elf says he thought this human was different, but he's just like the rest. He then decides to handle it himself and readies his bow to attack the men. Suddenly, the protagonist catches a strange scent coming from the trafficker's cart. He realizes the smell is coming from the vehicle transporting the enslaved elves. Inside the cart, an elven mother clutches her terrified daughter, trying to comfort her. Seeing the child in danger, the knight appears to change his mind about getting involved. Dahlia wonders if he can handle this alone but quickly summons his courage. He tells himself he trained for moments like this and must fight for his suffering people. The elf then fires an arrow toward the cart to stop the traffickers. The arrow explodes right beside the vehicle, creating a cloud of dust and smoke. The blonde archer is confused by the unexpected outcome of his attack. The blast knocks both men to the ground, leaving them bewildered about what happened. Amidst the dust, they wonder what that was and what to do next. Suddenly, a sword flies through the air and embeds itself in the cart's wheel, immobilizing it. Dahlia is surprised and wonders what that was and why Maron decided to help. The protagonist has a flashback of the nun holding him in her arms as a baby. He states that he doesn't care about the affairs of adults, but the child is innocent. One of the traffickers is shocked by the flying sword and tells the other to look up. From the cliff top, the two adventurers stare down at the men, ready to fight. Startled, one of the traffickers demands to know who they are and where they came from. The man shouts that they won't get away with attacking their property. Furious, Dahlia declares he has come to save his kin who are being enslaved, but the trafficker just scoffs, claiming they are licensed merchants and the elves are legal property. The elf is shocked to learn they work for the house of Marquis Bechtel. The man points to the crest on the cart and demands an apology for the damages. He calls the elves clueless, saying they do nothing but cause trouble. Dahlia's eyes widen with rage at the trafficker's insult. But the protagonist calmly points out that the crest on the cart is not the real Bechtel family crest. The elf prepares to fire, but the knight draws his attention to a specific detail. The trafficker insists the wolf symbol is there, but our hero corrects him. He points out that the wolf's eyes on the crest appear normal, without any flaws. The ancestor of the Bechtel family had only one eye, a detail reflected in the true crest. With that, he proves the symbol is a forgery, since the wolf depicted has both eyes. The traffickers are left speechless, stunned by the mysterious knight's revelation. The protagonist adds that the punishment for impersonating a noble is the ultimate penalty. Cornered, the lead trafficker orders his men to attack the pair of adventurers. Our hero muses that mercenaries used to avoid fighting each other out of professional courtesy. He then dodges a strike, remarking that it seems times have certainly changed. With a single, powerful punch to the chest, the knight easily takes down the mercenary. The man spits something out, his eyes rolling back as the force of the blow registers. He's sent flying backwards, slamming hard into a nearby tree. The impact is so forceful that the tree trunk snaps in two. The mercenary collapses to the ground, groaning in pain, unable to get back up. One of the traffickers is shocked to see the giant man defeated with a single hit. The leader of the group gets to his feet, cursing the adventurers for attacking them. As the pair readies for another fight, the man surrenders, terrified of being defeated. Later, at an inn, the rescued elf family expresses their gratitude to Maron. The elven mother says she doesn't know how she can ever thank them for saving their lives. Dahlia replies that he couldn't ignore his people and simply did what anyone should. He then approaches the knight and asks if everything has been sorted out with the guards. The elf explains that the traffickers were arrested and even their relatives are implicated. Just then, the little elven girl tugs on the protagonist's cape to get his attention. As our hero turns, her mother asks if he is the uncle who saved them. The little girl smiles and says the knight was very cool, thanking him for the rescue. The family then says their goodbyes, and the girl waves to the helmeted uncle and his friend. The protagonist watches in silence as the family departs, happy and safe. Dahlia turns to the hero, saying he never thought he'd say this to a human. Looking very embarrassed, he thanks him for saving his fellow elves. He hates to admit it, but it was thanks to a human that he was able to save his people. But then, the elf's attitude shifts completely, and he asks our protagonist for money. The knight clarifies that if Dahlia is truly grateful, he'd prefer payment in cash. He states that money is more reliable than words, which seems to confuse the elf. Furious, the blonde archer complains that he was just expressing gratitude for being saved by a human. He then tosses a bag of coins to Maron and tells him to get out of his sight. Dahlia calls him a greedy pig and declares he will never trust a human again. The next day, the protagonist returns to the guild to turn in the items from his mission. He hands over the bags containing gremlin eyes and other collected materials. The receptionist congratulates him on successfully completing his first mission. She praises the knight for handling such a difficult job so efficiently. The woman then gives him the payment for the mission, but the amount seems very low. Our hero finds the reward small, but she explains the reason for the deduction. As per guild regulations, his outstanding debt will be taken from his rewards. The knight is taken aback but vows to pay it all back as soon as possible. He then decides to pick up another mission to continue chipping away at his enormous debt. He heads to the notice board to look for a new job. The protagonist thinks that while money is important, he's craving something different to eat. One mission is in the Stowe's dungeon, but it's only filled with rock-type monsters. Another option is an orc encampment, and our hero has never been to one before. He wonders what orc meat tastes like and if it's similar to pork. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice and sees the girl he met on the carriage. She asks what he's doing there, and if he's become an adventurer like her. The woman jokes that she thought he had passed on, and the knight looks embarrassed. She apologizes, saying she got excited seeing him again and decides to introduce her team. Olga is the group's leader and Hecate is the team's mage, who accompanies Mickey. She introduces Maron as the strong but light-eating mercenary she met. The girl boasts that the three of them have been a team for a long time and work well together. Our hero thinks that a party of 2 archers and 1 mage is a bit unstable. She explains they've been looking for a tank for a week and can't enter dungeons without one. With that, she extends her hand and makes a proposal to our protagonist. Mickey invites him to join their team as the tank they desperately need. The knight is left surprised and speechless by the girl's unexpected offer. The scene then cuts to a forest where the new group is hunting orcs. A giant green monster attacks Mickey, but she manages to dodge the blow just in time. The beast rears back to strike again, but the protagonist blocks it with his shield. The orc roars in pain from the impact, and the mage casts an explosion spell. The magic detonates right in the monster's face, dealing massive damage. The orc's hand falls to the ground, signaling the team's victory over their foe. Miki celebrates their synchronization, noting they've already defeated 2 monsters today. She says that since Maron joined, their hunts have become much easier. Suddenly, the group hears a strange rumbling, and Olga wonders if it's an earthquake. But then, a horde of furious orcs appears, charging straight for them. Miki is terrified by the sheer number of monsters, guessing they heard the others' cries. With no time to think, Olga shouts for everyone to run for their lives. But Hecate trips and falls, getting left behind as the others flee. A giant orc closes in on the fallen mage, raising its club to attack. The girl is paralyzed with fear, unable to move or react to the impending strike. Her eyes fill with terror as she watches the monster's club swing down toward her. But suddenly, her vision is filled with red, and the mage doesn't understand what just happened. The protagonist had appeared, defeating all the orcs in an instant to save her. The others rush back and ask if she's okay, and the mage nods, relieved. Olga is stunned by the knight's power and wonders just how strong he really is. The last remaining orc struggles to its feet to attack, but is already riddled with arrows. After taking down 10 monsters, the leader decides it's time for a short rest. They talk about Maron's incredible strength and how he saved Hecate from the orcs. The mage then realizes she hasn't thanked him, and looks around for the knight who saved her. She sniffs the air with her beast-like nose and catches a very familiar scent. Hecate notes that it smells like roasted meat, which Miki finds strange in the middle of a dungeon. They find the protagonist alone by a campfire, roasting something over the flames. Miki jokes that he was the source of the smell and should have told them. But they are horrified to see that the knight is cooking the orc meat. Miki shouts, asking what he's doing, since that wasn't part of the mission. The protagonist had prepared a delicious grilled orc thigh to try. He expected to be like pork, but the aroma is more like a mix of beef and pork. With that, the knight takes a huge bite of the meat to discover its flavor. He is amazed to find that the taste of the meat is truly delicious. With each bite, the juices explode in his mouth, and the flavor is perfectly cooked. His friends look on in disgust as he eats the monster meat with such relish. He thinks that next time, he'll season it with salt and pepper to make it even better. With a fork, the hero admires the orc steak, thinking there's no way it could be bad. He loves the simple seasoning and the aroma of the pepper, which pairs perfectly. Olga and Miki are in disbelief that he's actually enjoying the food. Miki motions for the others to get away from the knight, as if she's afraid of him. He thinks the team is done for, but muses that he can use orc meat in other recipes. Suddenly, Olga calls out to him and puts a hand on his shoulder to talk. He says he's heard of places where people eat monsters out of necessity. Miki assures him they won't kick him out just because his tastes are a little unusual. That night, the group makes camp and Olga tells everyone to get some sleep. The next day, a massive, bloated orc suddenly appears before the team. But with the protagonist on the front line, the group prepares to fight fearlessly. The giant orc charges with its wooden club, ready to crush everyone. But our hero defends against the attack with his shield without any difficulty. With the creature distracted, the archers fire their arrows with deadly precision. Later, the mage watches the protagonist cook with a disgusted look on her face. Suddenly, the ground gives way, and the entire group plummets into an unexpected pit. Around the campfire, Olga asks why Maron sleeps by himself, and he replies it's just easier. Miki seems lost in thought, and the blonde guy offers to take the first watch of the night. The mage thanks him and wishes him good night as the knight settles down to sleep. He begins to relax to the calming crackle of the campfire burning through the night. As he sleeps, the protagonist begins to dream of memories from his distant past. In his dream, he sees his old party laughing about a priest who loved to brawl. One of them asks another why he went to gather firewood when the fire was already lit. The hero fondly remembers the gentle smile of one of his old friends. Suddenly, a voice shouts Maron's full name, jolting him from his sleep. He sits up confused to see his entire team standing over him, looking serious. The knight asks why everyone is awake when it isn't his turn for watch duty. Hecate then points a glowing hand at him and tells her companion not to move. The mage warns that her spell is ready and that he'd better answer their questions. While he was sleeping, the group used an appraisal stone to find out his level. Miki then points at him in shock, demanding to know what on earth they just saw. The screen reveals Maron's level and stats are unknown, and he holds the title, Kinslayer. Faced with this, the protagonist remains silent, with nothing to say about the revelation. The Kinslayer title is given to those who have defeated over 100 members of their own race. It also boosts attack power against individuals of the same species by 5%. Miki is horrified and asks if he really did that to over 100 people. Olga notes that he likely doesn't have a criminal record, but this is a different matter entirely. Hecate then demands that he explain the title and tell them if it's all a misunderstanding. But the protagonist stays quiet, unable to give his team an answer. His companions press him, asking why he won't say anything and if he joined them with ill intent. The knight turns away and simply apologizes, offering no explanation. Hearing this, Olga says he can't ignore this, regardless of his strength or his diet. The party leader states that he can no longer trust someone with a history like that. Because of this, he decides that he wants the protagonist to leave the group immediately. The knight understands their position and gets up to leave without causing any more trouble. He then gathers his belongings and prepares to depart, leaving the team behind. The scene flashes back 100 years to the Tursan forest in the south. We see a red-eyed goblin, its face twisted in a mask of pure rage and hatred. A younger Maron with red hair battles two monsters simultaneously. An archer from his former party celebrates as the goblins fall into their trap. And with a precise shot, she fires her arrows, striking both monsters at once. After the battle, the goblins' bodies litter the forest floor. The group's leader smiles and asks if everyone is alright and if anyone was hurt. She praises the archer for taking down two at once, and the woman accepts the compliment. A companion says there are 18 left, but Maron calls him all talk for not fighting. The leader ignores their bickering and asks if he has organized the proof kill tokens. She then calls for Charlotte, and the protagonist says he's ready to move on. Walking through the forest, the group complains about the receptionist and the lack of goblins. They speculate that the monsters have either gone into hiding or moved deeper into the woods. The hero's friend jokes about it, but Maron freezes, sensing something is wrong. He tries to get his companion's attention, but no one seems to hear him. Suddenly, his entire team turns to face him, their eyes glowing a vacant red. Terrified, the young man finds himself surrounded by eyes asking why he did it. A voice then questions him, asking why he was the only one who survived the attack. At that, the protagonist wakes up from the nightmare with a startled scream. Sitting up in bed, the knight is breathless and shaken by the terrible memory. He gets up and looks out the window of the inn where he spent the night alone. From the second floor, our hero observes the activity in the main hall below. As he descends the stairs, he notices that everyone in the tavern is staring at him. People whisper amongst themselves, wondering if he's the guy from the rumors. One of them says he's the slayer who preys on newbies and is shocked to see him at the guild. The protagonist figures the rumors have spread and that people always tend to exaggerate. He decides to ignore them and heads to the counter, where the receptionist has something for him. The woman congratulates him, announcing that as of today he's been promoted to rank C. Spotting a harpy quest, he imagines fried chicken and thinks he'd like to try it. Suddenly, a voice calls him a greedy pig, and the protagonist turns around surprised. It was Dahlia, the elf he'd met before, who greets him with a sarcastic tone. The blonde archer then comments on the rumors, but our hero ignores him, taking the harpy quest. Irritated, Dahlia shouts at him, and suddenly the knight sees a pair of red ears pop into view. A beast girl asks if this is the human Dahlia was talking about. She turns to the protagonist with a confident smirk and gets right in his face. The elf then introduces her as the leader of the new party he just joined. The woman introduces herself as Imotar and says she's heard of him, but Dahlia quickly cuts her off. Our hero sizes her up, thinking she looks like a martial artist based on her gear. Using his appraisal skill, he discovers she's level 59 and her class is priest. The knight is flabbergasted, wondering if he's seeing things because her class is priest. Imotar proudly confirms her class, but the protagonist still doesn't get it. He thinks that priests are support units and that she looks nothing like a holy person. Dahlia explains he was looking for a non-human party and came across a recruitment notice. The woman says she heard the rumors at the guild, which is why she made the suggestion to the elf. Imotar says she approved of him because, even as a human, he holds the title of kinslayer. The protagonist claims he has no idea what they're talking about, and the elf scoffs. With a grin, the beast girl extends her hand and invites the human to join their group. The knight is skeptical of the offer, but the woman asks if he has any other choice. Our hero glances around and sees everyone in the guild whispering about him. With no other option, he agrees to join the party temporarily for the guild mission. Imotar celebrates the human's decision, and Dahlia smiles, pleased with the outcome. The leader says they're going to test his skills, and the knight asks where. With a determined look, the girl replies that their destination is obvious. She points to the quest poster and shouts that they're heading to the Harpy dungeon now. In the dungeon, two creatures with red eyes fly toward them, screeching loudly. The new team readies for battle, and their leader gives the order to take the creatures down. The protagonist faces the monsters, thinking to himself that flying enemies are a pain. He wonders if he can reach them with a jump, but something zips past him. An arrow strikes a harpy, and Maron thinks that having an archer certainly makes things easier. Dahlia declares he won't let a human steal his prey and tells the hero to back off. The other creature then shrieks and dives at high speed to attack the group. Imotar yells for the knight to raise his shield and brace for impact. The beast girl then uses her new companion's shield as a springboard. With a powerful boost, our hero launches her with all his might toward the flying monster. Mid-air, the woman lands a mighty punch right in the face of the high-flying harpy. The blow is so strong that the monster is instantly defeated, and the two land safely. The girl praises their teamwork, but he asks her to give him a warning next time. The protagonist thinks that having companions to fight alongside him isn't so bad after all. They've already taken down 3 harpies, and their leader decides it's time for a break. But while cleaning up the area, the knight notices something strange among the feathers. Suddenly, a cute pink creature appears, clutching a harpy feather. Dahlia calls him a country bumpkin and asks if he's never heard of living dolls. He explains they are pet golems powered by mana, and this one is a limited edition. The elf then praises the little golem for finishing its task of cleaning up the feathers. The blonde archer adds that they don't need to eat and can even assist in combat. Amotar teases that Dahlia dotes on cute things as if they were actual babies. Noticing the protagonist's stare, the elf gets flustered and a bit startled. The leader shouts that it's a golem and Maron is absolutely not allowed to eat it. The elf comments that they're in luck, having already caught almost half the harpies. The woman then asks Dahlia why he hesitated to introduce the human to her. Suddenly, the girl catches a delicious scent of roasted chicken from nearby. The elf notices that Maron has disappeared, and the leader gets annoyed at whoever is cooking alone. Meanwhile, our hero is carving up the harpy meat to prepare his meal. He's already seasoned it with salt, and with the pan now hot, he's ready to cook. The knight fries the meat, thinking that the sizzling sound of cooking never gets old. And with a divine glow, the fried harpy's shoulder is finally ready. The knight observes that it looks like chicken and takes a bite to find out, but upon tasting the food, he's completely blown away by an explosion of flavor. He notes that the texture is like chicken, but the taste is far more intense and delicious. Suddenly, his companions rush over, yelling for him to stop immediately. The hero offers them some, but the girl shouts that she isn't mad because he's hungry. The woman is exasperated, and the elf declares this is the most horrific scene he's ever witnessed. He tries to explain that a harpy's face isn't human-like, but they don't want to hear it. Dahlia laments having seen something so cruel, while the group's leader begins to salivate. Both of them are speechless as they stare at the dish, taking in the wonderful aroma of the meat. The beast girl is conflicted. It's a monster, but it looks incredibly delicious. She then refuses to look at what she considers to be a great blasphemy. At that, the protagonist offers her a piece, which she instantly refuses with a disgusted look. He says it's a shame since it's very good, and the smell makes her extremely tempted. The woman loses it over the temptation, and Dahlia tries to calm her down before she attacks. She screams about the smell, and our hero is reminded of the other dish he was preparing. He then grabs the other pan, saying he overcooked it a bit, but it's ready. With a divine glow, the roasted harpy leg is finally ready to eat. Amotar is shocked he's going to eat the legs, and he replies that he's always wanted to try them. Ignoring her opinion, the protagonist takes a huge bite of the leg. He loves the meat, which is as soft and sweet as pudding, and declares this is pure happiness. The protagonist thinks it would be even better with a sauce and decides to take the rest home. Seeing this, Dahlia complains that he can't even relax with the knight around. He then asks what the hero is eating, and the man offers him a piece. Suddenly, the elf screams that the claws are poisonous, and the protagonist collapses, paralyzed. Desperate, he tells Amotar to use a healing spell on the idiotic human. But the girl says she doesn't know how, claiming she never learned that spell because it's a hassle. Just then, another harpy appears, drawn by the noise, and the elf blames the girl. She then tells the elf to get out of her way so she can show off a new spell she learned. With that, the girl unleashes a massive fireball that incinerates everything in its path. Dahlia is devastated. The magic hit his golem, which he hadn't even owned for a full week. After the dust settles, only the girl remains standing while the others are on the ground. Furious, the elf grabs her, complaining about his precious golem that was destroyed. She apologizes, and he says he'll never forget this, as the hero reflects on the chaos. Back at the guild, the receptionist accepts the mission items with a smile. The group's leader asks her to dispose of the harpy meat they brought back. The elf complains that the day was mentally draining, and the girl offers to get him a new golem. Suddenly, the knight appears with the monster's claws, startling the woman. She asks why he brought them, and he replies that it would be a waste to leave them. The girl tells him to put them in his inventory, but the protagonist doesn't know what that is. He then remembers he has something like that and immediately opens his inventory screen. The screen displays 30 storage slots, and he says he completely forgot about it. The protagonist realizes he's been carrying heavy things for no reason, which explains the stairs. He puts a hand to his head, thinking he can't believe he forgot something so basic. Worried about his mental state, he's interrupted by Amotar calling his name. She asks how the mission felt, saying they work well together, and he simply agrees. With that, the leader extends her hand and invites him to officially join their party. The knight shakes her hand, and she celebrates that they are now a real team. He thinks it's better to have allies than to go on missions alone. So, the protagonist finally accepts, and the girl celebrates with a joyful shout. The leader says she's going to register them as a formal party and runs off. Our hero thinks that a lot has happened, but now they are officially companions. Dahlia corrects him, saying he's counting on him for the rest of his short human lifespan. The knight then thinks of Charlotte and says he's counting on her as well. He remains silent for a moment before formally greeting his new teammates. The girl returns excitedly, announcing that the party registration is complete. She shows them the paper with the team's name, and both of them are shocked by what they read. With a huge smile, the leader announces that the party's name is the Messy Team. The elf flips out, asking why she would register them with such a ridiculous name. She explains that she heard the human muttering the word and decided to use it. She says she liked the sound of it and that it spoke to her heart somehow. The elf continues to protest, but the leader insists she couldn't think of any other name. Desperate, the blonde archer laments that all his future achievements will be tied to that name. The protagonist ignores their argument and decides to head back to his room to eat the meat. The girl calls after him, asking where he's going, but he just says he's going to his room. At that, the leader decides to throw a welcome party for the new member of the group. Later, at a tavern, the team toasts to the mission's success and their new member. Amutar tells everyone to eat and drink their fill as the night is still young. Dahlia still hasn't accepted the name, but the girl says it's already registered and can't be changed. The elf gets annoyed, but our hero just stares at the delicious-looking food on the table. He sits in silence observing the feast, unable to eat any of it, but he decides to take a bite anyway, not wanting to be rude to his friends. Dahlia complains about the food's taste, while the knight finds it as awful as ever. The leader then changes the subject, saying she has something to discuss with the protagonist. Deep into her drink, she reveals that the party's goal is to become rank A. Our hero asks why, and she explains that they each have their own reasons. It is explained that adventurers can advance in rank by passing promotion exams. To reach rank A, one must be recognized by the guild for their strength and accomplishments. And the content of the promotion exam is a mystery to nearly all adventurers. The girl then begins to talk about her motivations, but the knight seems distracted. Imotar reveals that her younger siblings are still enslaved, having been captured by humans. A man promised that if she raised the money within 3 years, he would set them free. She explains that the only way to free them is by paying to buy their freedom. The protagonist is confused by the word revolution and doesn't understand what it means. The other two are shocked, asking if he's unaware of such a recent major event. Dahlia then decides to explain this important event in simple terms. He recounts that for centuries, humans enslaved other races for various reasons. His own family was among those captured and exploited by humans. They were locked in prisons to prevent escape and used to fulfill selfish desires. Many of his race withered away in those dark cells, losing both body and spirit. And any who tried to escape and were caught met a terrible and cruel end. Tired of the tyranny, many races united to form an alliance against the humans. This marked the beginning of the revolution, which humans referred to as the War of the Races. They presented several demands to the humans, one of which was the abolition of slavery. The alliance declared all-out war if their demands were not met. In the end, the humans accepted the conditions and signed a peace treaty between the races. With that, once hidden races began to emerge, and now it's common to see them. Dahlia explains it's because of this treaty that they are allowed to be adventurers. That's why she became an adventurer, to earn money quickly and free her family. The knight then turns to the elf and asks about his own circumstances. Dahlia reveals that his goal is to become the elder of the forest where he grew up. His family has protected the forest for generations, but the role is forced upon each child. Even though his older sister detests the idea, everyone is pressuring her to take the position. The blonde archer then clenches his fist, stating he is more capable of protecting the forest. The council decided that if he can prove his worth, they will allow him to become the elder. For that reason, becoming a rank A adventurer is a necessary step toward his greater goal. The protagonist thinks that everyone here has a desperate reason to fight and succeed. The elf says they would be happy if he joined them in their goal as well. The group's leader then asks if the human has a goal he wishes to achieve. The knight is reminded of the tree in the cemetery and his own lost past. His companions notice his silence and tell him he doesn't have to talk about it if it's too difficult. But our hero clenches his fist and says that perhaps this was his purpose all along. With firm resolve, the protagonist reveals there is a dragon he intends to defeat. The other two are stunned by this revelation and ask if he really said, dragon. He then clarifies that it's the same one that attacked Adorama and burned the village to the ground. The knight says that when he finds it, there is something he absolutely must do. His friends fall silent and our hero thinks they must assume he's joking. But suddenly, the elf smiles and says the human's ambitions are even greater than theirs. The girl jokes, asking if he plans to eat the dragon, and calls him completely insane. Hearing this, the elf adds that ranking up is also his goal to gain access to more information. With their goals aligned, the three of them toast and resolve to do their best together. The next day, the sun shines over the city as the new team prepares to get started. The protagonist decides to take it easy and cook a hearty meal for everyone. However, he realizes he's out of money after paying for his room at the inn. Even though cooking oil is expensive, he decides to heat up the pan to start cooking. He then uses his storage skill to retrieve the meat he had saved. A blue light glows in his hand as he accesses his personal inventory. He is surprised to see that the raw meat is perfectly preserved inside. The knight realizes his inventory is the perfect food storage space for him. The first thing he does is whisk the eggs to prepare the batter. Next, he carefully coats the pieces of meat in breadcrumbs. Then he drops the meat into the hot oil, and the sizzling sound fills the kitchen. Our hero smiles, thinking the sound of frying food is something he'll never get tired of. He flips the pieces to prevent burning and fries them a second time to get them golden brown. And with a divine glow, the fried harpy thighs are finally ready. He thinks that for a first attempt, the dish turned out very well and prepares for a taste. The knight then takes a huge bite of the fried thigh he just prepared. The crispy coating and juicy meat create the perfect combination for him. He finds the flavor similar to that of a meaty crab and absolutely loves it. The more he eats, the more he wants, and he's glad he made enough for everyone. Suddenly, he hears Dahlia's voice calling for him and knocking on his door. The elf complains that it's already midday and tells the human to open the door. The protagonist opens it, and the blonde archer asks why he's wearing his helmet inside his room. Dahlia says he has something urgent to discuss, but the knight was in the middle of a meal. The elf then reveals that there seems to be a serious problem with their party leader. Our hero invites him in and asks what happened and if it's important. Upon seeing the plate of food, the blonde archer freaks out, asking if he's cooking again. But he regains his composure, saying the girl is the priority right now, not the food. The elf then asks the knight to keep it a secret and requests to borrow some money. The protagonist is confused, having no idea what's going on. With a dark aura, our hero says he doesn't want to hear it and tells the elf to leave. He warns that if the reason isn't good enough, he will kick him out immediately. With a serious expression, Dahlia reveals that Imitar was deceived by her human master. He reminds him that she was saving money to free her siblings from slavery. The reason for the party's break was for her to visit them, but something went wrong. It turns out the master broke his promise and was preparing her siblings for an auction. The elf believes the human planned it all just to toy with the girl's emotions. When she begged him to stop, he said he would cancel it if she paid him within 5 days. The price was 10 gold coins per person, making it 20 gold coins in total. Converting it to his old currency, the knight calculates the outrageous ransom amount. He figures that 20 gold coins is roughly equivalent to 2 million yen. The elf explains that the proud girl begged him to save her siblings, so the protagonist asks if he came to collect the money on the leader's behalf. The blonde archer then swears on his name that he will pay every last coin back, but the knight refuses, stating he has no reason to trust him, nor does he have the money. Dahlia grows concerned, reminding him that her siblings are just little children. Our hero recognizes the emotional manipulation, but the elf claims he's just stating facts. The knight asks what he gets out of lending the money, and the blonde archer has no answer. The elf has no way to guarantee repayment, and the protagonist becomes thoughtful. Cornered, the blonde archer clenches his fist, wondering if this is his only option. Suddenly, he calls out to the human and leans in to whisper something in his ear. He asks if the knight possesses the wind, a tribute among his affinities. It's explained that elemental affinity determines which element a person is best suited for. Magic used with one's affinity consumes less mana and is more powerful. This affinity is determined at birth, and most people are born with only one. However, some geniuses are born with 2 or more and become great mages. With a determined look, the elf makes a proposal to our protagonist. He promises to bestow upon him the blessing of the spirit of the wind attribute if he helps. Our hero wonders how someone can just give an attribute, and the elf gets annoyed. Desperate, Dahlia swears on the name of his forest and asks if he believes him now. With a sigh, the protagonist accepts the deal and gets up to set the plan in motion. He then tells him they should go, and the elf seems somewhat relieved by his decision. The two of them leave the inn and start walking through the city streets in the morning. The blonde archer then asks how they're going to get that much money so quickly. Our hero reveals his plan to hunt in a high-level dungeon and sell the drops. Dahlia is shocked, as the guild strictly prohibits entering dungeons above one's rank. The knight says he's aware of the rule, but it's the only way to get the money in time. The guild severely punishes rule breakers with fines and mission suspensions. Any adventurer caught could even lose their license and never work again. Besides, the knight points out that those dungeons are far away and would take time to reach. The round trip alone could take up to 4 days, which is too long for them. He then asks how the elf planned to get the money to help their friend. The blonde archer says he was going to use his savings, and our hero asks if he has any. He then asks if Maron has any savings set aside for an emergency. The elf suggests he sell something, but our hero remembers he owns nothing of value. He then opens his inventory, searching for anything he could possibly sell. Among his items, he finds a pair of earrings that might be his only option. The two then agree to pool what they can and meet up later to figure things out. The scene shifts to late afternoon, the sky orange as leaves fall from the trees. We see a hooded figure walking down a dark, abandoned alley in the city. The mysterious person hides behind some crates, peeking into a dimly lit shop. The owner asks what the person wants, and they approach the counter in silence. The figure says they have something to sell, and the man replies that he buys a bit of everything. With that, the protagonist places the pair of earrings he found in his inventory on the counter. The man is surprised and says he should be selling something like that at a jewelry store. But suddenly, the merchant recognizes the jewelry and is completely floored. He shouts that they are the Pleiades fragments, a rare and practically unobtainable item. The knight explains that an old companion gave him the earrings as a gift. In a luxurious mansion, a man prepares to meet with his prisoner. He finds her trying to calm herself and scoffs at her attempt to resist him. The man says her beastly brain has finally understood that fighting back is useless. He reminds her that the past 3 years were just a whim and asks if she enjoyed her freedom. With a hateful glare, the girl says she wants to tear him to shreds. Suddenly, she hears a familiar voice calling her name and turns toward the door. The party leader is surprised to hear her friend's voice calling out to her. At that moment, Dahlia and Maron enter the room, and the girl is relieved to see them. She asks why the elf brought the human along, and he explains that Maron helped him. The blonde archer says he'll explain later, but right now the money is what's important. Our hero introduces himself and says they've come to pay the ransom for her siblings. The girl is shocked, thinking about how she accepted help even though they're on the same team. The master scoffs, questioning if rank C adventurers could really acquire so much money. But he is stunned to see that the 20 gold coins are all genuine. The girl demands that the man free her siblings, and he just smiles maliciously. The master claims the contract stipulated she had to earn the money on her own. The party leader is left speechless by the man's audacity and the ridiculous loophole. Dahlia gets angry, stating that by law, money from family must be accepted. Cornered, the master orders his men to bring the slaves and their identity documents. The girl thinks that if it weren't for the elf, she would be completely at this man's mercy. The master's servant then returns with the adventurer's 2 younger siblings. The 2 shy children enter the room, and the girl rushes to embrace them. She hugs them tightly, asking if they are okay, and they quietly nod. With tears in her eyes, the older sister apologizes for taking so long to save them. The protagonist observes the scene and notices the children are extremely thin. Angered, the knight clenches his fist, furious that they let the children go hungry. The servant then hands the slaves' original identity documents to the master. The man says he's getting rid of them, and that their deal is now concluded. The girl then uses her magic to incinerate the papers and free her siblings. With a fiery glint in her eyes, she burns the documents of servitude forever. The master says her siblings may be free, but she is still his slave. With a dark smile, he threatens the group, and our hero steps in front of the girl. The protagonist declares they will also be purchasing the party leader's freedom. Everyone is shocked by the knight's action, his unexpected proposal. The girl protests that she doesn't need his help and can take care of herself. But our hero ignores her and asks the master for the price of her freedom. The man laughs and apologizes, saying that unfortunately she is not for sale. He explains she's already listed in today's auction, and he can't cancel it. The knight then resigns the deal, and the master says he can still buy her. The man suggests they participate in the auction and place a bid for the girl. The party leader is confused, saying no one ever mentioned her being auctioned off. Dahlia shouts at the master, accusing him of blatantly lying to their faces. With a smirk, the man states that the sale of slaves is his legitimate right. The elf gets furious and calls him a scoundrel, but the protagonist calms him down. He tells the blonde archer he's being childish and needs to use his head more. Our hero explains the auction is just a lie designed to torment the girl. So he declares they will buy her at the auction, which surprises the woman. The knight asks her to wait, assuring her that he has a plan. He turns to the master and says that every child needs a guardian. He remembers a woman lovingly caring for children at an orphanage, and then he recalls a man placing a comforting hand on a child's head. The protagonist then approaches her and says that this also applies to her. He remembers the nun saying every child deserves protection and has a reason to live. Our hero tells her she is the only one who can keep the children safe and must look after them. He reminds her that saving her siblings isn't the end of it. She can't leave them on their own. With tears in her eyes, the girl agrees, saying she'll give his plan a chance. She warns him that if he's all talk and ends up losing, she will never forgive him. Dahlia tells her to trust the plan and that they'll see her at the auction later. After they leave, the master turns to the girl with a dark expression. He scoffs at her, asking if she really thinks those 2 can free her. The party leader glares at the man with hatred, hugging her siblings tightly. The master then grabs her by the neck, saying he has no intention of selling her at the auction. With a malicious grin, he tells her she can't escape and will come crawling back to him. But the girl just stares back with a defiant and hopeful look in her eyes. The man then orders his servants to prepare the merchant support team. That night, the auction begins, the mansion's lights shining in the city's darkness. The first item is a criminal slave with a starting bid of 4 gold coins. The protagonist and the elf watch the auction in silence, waiting for the right moment. Dahlia mentions that the average price for a beastman is 8 to 9 gold coins. Our hero remains deep in thought as the auction for the human slave continues. The auctioneer then announces the next item, a wolf woman from the distant frontier. And with a spotlight on the stage, the slave gladiator Imotar is presented to the crowd. On stage, the girl thinks to herself that the master must have pulled some dirty trick. She clenches her fists, knowing she needs to warn her friends but is powerless to do so. The auctioneer announces that she is young and more durable than any human. The master smiles with satisfaction as he watches his slave finally being auctioned. He scoffs, thinking the adventurers have already spent their money and can't possibly help her. With a malicious grin, he calls them brats and doubts they could ever afford her. Suddenly, a man in the audience turns and says he won't let them win. The auctioneer then announces the starting bid, 6 gold coins and 30 silver. The same man from before raises his paddle, making the first bid of the auction. Our hero is annoyed that the man was quicker and placed a bid before he could. Suddenly, another man shouts a bid of 20 gold coins, shocking the entire room. The girl is stunned by the amount, thinking they could never afford that much. She despairs as the auctioneer asks if there are any bids higher than 20. Dahlia panics, the average price was much lower, and the bidding escalated too quickly. The protagonist then raises his paddle and bids 21 gold coins. The auctioneer asks for the bidding limit, and the man explains the auction's rules. At that, the knight raises his paddle again and bids 50 gold coins. The elf is shocked, asking how he has so much money when he said he only had 10. The master is flabbergasted by the bid, unable to believe they had that kind of money. The auctioneer is also stunned as 50 gold coins is the maximum possible bid. People in the audience murmur, doubting he can actually pay such a high price. The auctioneer states that house policy requires immediate payment in full in cash. The elf becomes desperate, asking where the knight is going in the middle of the auction. The protagonist then climbs onto the stage, and the auctioneer pleads with him to stop. With a golden light, our hero approaches the girl kneeling on the stage. The party leader is astonished to see gold coins raining down around her. The knight then uses his skill, pouring a mountain of gold onto the stage. With a serious look, he asks if that is sufficient payment for her. The master is in disbelief, unable to process how a rank C adventurer has so much gold. A massive pile of gold coins forms on the stage, leaving the girl speechless. The auctioneer then shouts that the slave has been sold, and the girl is in a state of shock. Later that night, the siblings are reunited in a room at the inn. The two children run to embrace their older sister, who is waiting for them. With tears in her eyes, the girl says she is so happy they are finally safe. The elf asks why the knight didn't mention he had so much money stashed away. Dahlia smiles, saying he's just glad everything worked out in the end. The protagonist then turns to leave, but the party leader calls out to him. Looking extremely embarrassed, the girl thanks him for saving her and her siblings' lives. She says he saved her family, and she doesn't know how she can ever repay him. Suddenly, one of the children smells meat, and our hero invites them to eat. The girl asks the elf how they can possibly repay the knight's help. He replies that the hero only helped because he considers them his teammates. Suddenly, the leader detects a greasy smell coming from the protagonist and finds it odd. The blonde archer understands instantly and, with a panicked expression, tells the knight to stop. He rushes to stop his friend, but it's already too late. Our hero turns around, confused, holding a plate of food in his hand. One of the girl's brothers then takes a piece of the fried chicken the knight made. The children absolutely love the taste, saying it's the best thing they've ever eaten. Dahlia yells, demanding to know what he's feeding the children. The leader says fried chicken is fine, since they have stomachs of iron. She explains they can eat just about anything as long as it isn't poisonous. But then she asks what kind of chicken it is, and our hero answers. He tells her it's harpy meat, and the girl freaks out over what she's given her siblings. She tries to make them spit it out, but they insist it's too delicious. With no other choice, the older sister takes a piece and prepares to try it herself. The girl is stunned by how delicious it is and wonders if she's dreaming. With a conflicted look, she prepares to eat another piece of the meat. She thinks that if she passes out, the kids will get scared and stop eating. Disgusted, the leader says she would rather be defeated than eat a disgusting monster. Nevertheless, she closes her eyes and takes a big bite of the harpy chicken. As she tastes the food, she is utterly shocked by the incredible flavor. Dahlia asks what's wrong as she suddenly starts to tremble uncontrollably. He worries, asking if she's been poisoned like the protagonist was before. But the girl shouts that the flavor is amazing, and her siblings ask for more. She says she has never tasted meat so tender and juicy in her entire life. The knight smiles and says it's good, and she nods in embarrassment. The party leader insists it's not good and that she will never forget this humiliation. Our hero then turns to the elf and reminds him of the debt he still owes. He demands 90% of his earnings until the 70 gold coins are paid back. The blonde archer loses it, calling him a heartless scoundrel for demanding so much. With the deal settled, Dahlia gives his friend the reward he had promised. That night, the two of them go to a forest, and the knight asks why. The elf explains it's difficult to perform the ritual in the city, which is why they came here. He then asks the protagonist to remove his gloves so the blessing can work. Our hero complies, taking off his thick gauntlets to receive the spirit's power. It is explained that elves are born with the blessing of a spirit, which defines their affinity. This spirit remains with them for their entire life and can grant its blessing to another. But even though it's their own spirit, the blessing can only be given once in a lifetime. Dahlia says the knight is his savior and has fulfilled his wish twice over. With that, the elf summons the spirit of the wind to bestow its blessing upon the hero. Suddenly, a gust of wind envelops the protagonist and he feels its power. He cannot see it, but he feels the power of the spirit flowing into his hand. Dahlia explains that humans once stole these blessings, using pain as a lure. The knight listens in silence to the sad history of his friend's people. The elf says they have long memories, which is why so many still suffer from the trauma. With a green aura, the protagonist feels the power of the blessing in his hands. But the blonde archer states that he despises the humans who cause so much suffering. With a glow in his eyes, he transfers the spirit's blessing to the knight. Our hero then receives the power of the wind in a blast of energy that strikes him. His status screen updates, showing he has acquired an affinity for the wind attribute. Dahlia clarifies that he still hates humans and the blessing changes nothing between them. He says that just because he gave the blessing doesn't mean he has forgiven humankind. The next day, the group meets at the guild to begin their new journey. Their leader waves excitedly, saying the knight has finally arrived for the mission. She explains they found a non-human babysitter for her siblings. The girl celebrates her first day as a free citizen and is incredibly excited. With a smile, she shows them the new quest she picked up for the Crystal Cave. The elf is surprised, as the mission is located in a muddy and dangerous swamp. The protagonist reads about the monster and wonders if mud tastes good. Seeing his friend's reaction, the blonde archer wonders if he actually plans to eat mud. The elf asks if she checked for other monsters, and their leader says she'll explain on the way. She mentions that after the mission, she needs to find a place for her and her siblings to live. Arriving at the carriage stand, the group finds a luxury vehicle and is puzzled. The girl says it isn't the one she called for, and that she can't afford it. Suddenly, a figure in skeletal armor appears and greets them all. A familiar voice emerges from the carriage, and the girl's former master reveals himself. The party leader recognizes the voice and is shocked to see her old master there. The man steps out with a smile, saying he didn't mean to arrive so late. The knight asks what he wants, and the man replies that he missed her. With a malicious look, he says he is there to make them a proposal. He then suggests they trade the slave back, which surprises the hero. The knight turns to face him and begins to tremble with rage at the absurd proposition. The elf freaks out, saying the matter is already settled and the deal was finalized. The master scoffs, telling the girl not to give him such an ugly look. He warns them that his guards are both above level 60 and they can't stop them. The protagonist then steps forward and addresses the man by his full name. The master offers 100 gold coins to have the slave back, but our hero refuses. The man is shocked by the refusal and doesn't understand what's happening. The elf is enraged by the master's audacity, calling him a foul-mouthed villain. At that, the master offers 150 coins, but the knight refuses again. Imodar steps in front, shouting that the hero wouldn't sell her for 100 million in gold. The man scoffs and raises the offer to 200 gold coins, still confident he'll succeed. Dahlia becomes desperate at the offer and tells the knight to stop even considering it. Suddenly, the man who handled the paperwork states that Maron was just toying with him. He then clarifies that the documents were destroyed, making the girl a free person. Our hero warns that if he disrespects her again, things will not end well for him. Full of hatred, the master calls them pathetic for acting so brave and friendly. He then says he thought he could resolve this with money, but he won't give up on her. At that, the elf pulls her back, declaring he'll have to take her by force if he wants her. But suddenly, the master is struck by a powerful punch to the face and sent flying backward. Imodar says she couldn't stand listening to him anymore and had to put an end to it. Radiating a red aura, the girl shouts that she is no longer his slave and demands his respect. One of the skeletal knights prepares to attack the girl for her insolence, but the protagonist stops him, warning him not to draw his sword so recklessly. In one swift move, our hero slams the skeletal knight onto the ground with immense force. The other guard is angered by this and readies his bow to attack our hero. The protagonist then bends down and picks up a small stone from the ground to defend himself. He then throws the stone with such force that it slices through the air like a sharp blade. The guard is hit dead on, spitting something out before collapsing in defeat. The master then demands to know his level, and Maron reveals that it's 95. The girl is shocked to learn the protagonist is level 95, and the elf is equally surprised. With a smirk, the girl grabs the master, saying they aren't finished yet. Suddenly, a scream of pain echoes down the street as the man's beating continues. The elf then warns her they'll be late for their carriage and need to leave soon. With a smile, the girl says she has finished her work and the man is now unconscious. She stretches with satisfaction and tells him never to show his face around here again. The master, lying on the ground, threatens that he'll make them regret this when he informs the Merchants Guild. With a dark aura, the knight says the rumors about him already make it hard to find a party. He then warns that crushing a Merchants Guild is far easier than finding a new team. With that, the protagonist delivers a powerful kick, shattering something with great force. The man's carriage explodes into 1,000 pieces, leaving him stunned by the destruction. Our hero then warns him to know his place and that this was just a small warning. The scene then shifts to the crystal cave, where purple crystals glow all around. Inside, the elf shouts that the monsters are weak to fire and tells someone to light a torch. The girl then gets an idea and Dahlia panics, begging her to stop immediately. But it's too late. Imodar unleashes a massive fireball that incinerates everything in its path. The elf complains that she needs to practice that skill, but the girl just laughs, saying she hasn't had time. Later, the protagonist prepares a meal that looks rather disgusting and strange. His friends ask if he's really going to eat that, and the elf remarks that it looks way too gross. The knight brings the spoon to his helmet and notices the food has no scent whatsoever. He then figures the taste must be different from dirt and tries the strange food. The taste is awful, and he finds the texture to be the worst of all, like clay mixed with chewing gum. At that, the knight decides to eat the rest of the fried harpy chicken he had saved. Suddenly, the girl calls out to him, thanking him for saving her family from slavery. Our hero says she doesn't need to pay him back since she has siblings to feed, but she's still worried. She asks how he managed to get so much money and if he got involved in something dangerous. Our protagonist denies it, saying it was nothing like what she's imagining. He reveals that he sold a memento from an old companion, which shocks the girl. She worries because even if she pays him back, he can never get that item back. With a determined look, the woman faces the knight, who tells her everything is fine now. Our hero explains that they are his companions, and the way to repay him is to stay with the party. The elf agrees, adding it's good to have her as a leader, which makes the girl blush. Imodar says she will do her best, and then asks about the blessing the elf gave him. Dahlia explains that it wasn't a gift, but rather payment for a contract between them. The girl asks why he would give the blessing to a human whose real face he's never even seen. She then sneaks up behind him and tries to peek under our hero's helmet. The woman asks if he has a scar, but the elf scolds her for being too nosy. The blonde archer says his friend hides too much and should try to open up a little more. Our protagonist remains silent, seemingly pondering his friend's advice. Suddenly, a glint appears on his helmet as if he's about to do something. Out of nowhere, a monster attacks, striking the protagonist with its sharp, purple crystals. His companions are shocked and frozen, unable to react to the creature's unexpected assault. The beast is a lizard with a crystal tail that glows in the cave's darkness, but the creature is struck in the eye and shrieks in pain from the direct hit. The girl then leaps onto the monster to finish it off once and for all. After defeating the beast, she turns with concern and asks if Maron is okay. The elf is also shocked and asks the knight to lift his head so they can see. The hero clutches his face, and Dahlia shouts that there are crystal shards in his friend's eye. With his hand on his helmet, the protagonist realizes he's been hit and feels the sting of the cut. He says his vision is fine, but the blonde archer yells that he's bleeding profusely. At that, the girl orders him to take off the helmet immediately so they can see the wound. She says if his eye is injured, they need to return to the temple right away. Suddenly, the protagonist remembers two adventurers screaming in fear of a monster. In his memory, he sees one of his old companions running desperately through a forest. Back in the present, the knight yells for no one to touch him, leaving his friends confused. The elf then asks if he really refuses to show them his face, no matter what. With his hands on his helmet, the protagonist replies yes, looking deeply troubled by the situation. He then starts to panic, begging them to stop and not look at his face. His friends insist they need to check the wound before they can treat it properly. But our hero maintains that he's fine and his vision is perfectly normal. The protagonist points out that they know his level, and a level 30 monster couldn't seriously injure him. He then assures them he is truly okay and that they continue the mission. His companions stare at him with serious expressions, not looking convinced. The elf relents, telling him not to overdo it, and the girl apologizes for trying to remove his helmet. The knight then apologizes as well for shouting at them like that. Back at the guild, the mission is marked as complete, and the team receives their payment. The receptionist asks if something happened, and the girl nervously denies it. She approaches him and asks if he's sure he doesn't need to visit the temple for healing. At that, the elf suggests they take the day off to get some rest. Suddenly, an adventurer rushes into the guild, shouting that there's an emergency. He runs up to a girl and asks what's causing all the commotion. The woman reveals that a new dungeon has appeared in the forest region near the capital. She shouts that the place is called the Garden of the Dryad's Flowers, and our hero becomes thoughtful. His friends think it's best to let other teams handle it and head back to the inn. But the protagonist announces they will also participate in the subjugation, shocking everyone. He then reveals that he has something else in mind that is far more important right now. The scene then shifts to a lush green forest under a clear blue sky on a sunny day. Several teams are gathered to receive instructions from the guild about the new mission. Two adventurers mention that the first person to find the dungeon was defeated and that it has two bosses. Upon hearing they are dryads, the knight immediately starts thinking about how to cook the plant-based monsters. The girl warns him that if he eats in front of everyone, their party's reputation will be ruined. He then says that since elves are vegetarians, he'll prepare a special dish just for Dahlia. One of the mission organizers confirms that the rumor about two bosses is true. Suddenly, a knight in golden armor declares there's nothing to worry about. He introduces himself as Incorman, the first hero, and guarantees the operation's safety. The elf then gets annoyed, asking how Maron doesn't even know what a hero is these days. He explains it's the title given to those who fight against the Demon King and his minions. However, some people fear the appearance of heroes due to their immense power. Their presence can be seen as a bad omen, heralding the resurrection of the great Demon King. Because of this, they receive special treatment and are generally well regarded by everyone. The protagonist uses appraisal skill and sees the hero holds multiple dungeon clearing titles. Dahlia reveals he's seen a hero before, but of the 5 that were found, only 3 remain. The second was eliminated, and the 4th was defeated by a monster in a dark forest. Our protagonist remains silent, appearing to recall something important. Suddenly, a swarm of giant bees flies toward the adventurers to attack. The elf readies himself and with his bow and arrow, takes precise aim at the flying creatures. With a perfect shot, he strikes the monsters with his verdant energy arrows. The girl also joins the fray, taking down one of the bees with a powerful punch. The knight leaps into action, cutting down enemies with a swift strike of his sword. 2 onlookers comment that the messy team is quite strong and skilled. The girl laughs that their party's name is getting around, and the elf tells her to focus. The plan is for the hero and the rank B team to handle the bosses while the others provide support. Suddenly, one of the Dryad bosses, level 58, appears before them. The rank B team seems to be struggling, and one of them complains that they're making a fool of themselves. The hero then enters the fight to hold the monster, asking them to keep it occupied for a moment. With his glowing sword, the blonde young man prepares to deliver the finishing blow. In a powerful strike, he slices the monster in 2, defeating the first dungeon boss. The other adventurers are stunned by the hero's power and congratulate him on the victory. With a confident smile, the young man boasts about his strength and his recent win. But suddenly, the other Dryad boss lets out a furious roar at its partner's defeat. The adventurers wonder why the creature is being so noisy but don't pay it much mind. The creature then transforms into a much darker and more powerful form than before. The monster attacks without warning, grabbing one of the female adventurers, who screams for help. Protagonist realizes there's a trick. The dungeon has multiple bosses that must be fought. He then understands that both bosses must be defeated at the same time to claim victory. The creature evolves into Tyrant, its level soaring to 70 and striking fear into everyone. His elven companion asks what they're seeing, as our hero yells for everyone to fall back at once. At this, the hero is also taken aback, stating the monster is now far beyond their capabilities. He decides to buy them time, urging the other adventurers to flee as fast as they can. But the beast vines ensnare the others, and the blonde warrior calls them a complete nuisance for it. It's revealed he previously bought intel from the Thieves Guild about this new dungeon. He admits to lying on purpose, blaming the others for blindly trusting him without checking for themselves. With no regard for their fate, he strolls toward the monstrosity with a smirk on his face. The young man readies himself for battle, declaring it's time to end this like a true hero. But, without warning, the monster casts a curse, preventing him from using skills for 10 minutes. Stunned, he wonders what's happening, as he'd heard nothing about a curse ability. With that, the creature hurls him into the air with immense force, leaving no room for defense. Next, the monster smashes him into the ground with a devastatingly powerful blow. Caught in the vines, the blonde man struggles to break free, thinking he just needs to sever them to escape. Seizing the opportunity, the beast charges forward to strike the immobilized hero. He takes a direct hit and cries out, his eyes turning white from the sheer force of the impact. Witnessing the hero's defeat, the other adventurers panic and begin to retreat. Our protagonist realizes that if this continues, many more will fall. He watches the creature pursuing the others and prepares to finally enter the fray. As his sword begins to glow, the knight wonders just how much he should restrain himself. Our hero faces the colossal creature, questioning if he should hold back even a little. Lunging forward, he delivers a swift, precise strike, slashing the monster with his gleaming blade. This attack is so powerful that a wave of blue energy obliterates the surroundings. Numerous trees are sliced in half and come crashing down, showcasing the strike's raw power. After the dust settles, a notification screen materializes before our hero. Its message announces he has acquired the title, Conqueror of the Dryad's Garden. His friends rush over in shock, while the knight ponders the new title he just earned. The girl congratulates him on the incredible feat, but the elf mutters he was just showing off. Our protagonist feels a bit awkward at the reaction, unsure of what to say to his friend. The other adventurers approach, thanking him for saving all their lives. They call him amazing for taking down a boss that not even the hero could handle. But a moment later, they start whispering about the rumors of him eating monsters. Overhearing their chatter, his companions glare at the group with pure anger. The girl fumes at their ingratitude, while the elf shouts if it's human nature to repay kindness with malice. She tells him to get lost, and Dahlia asks her to bring salt to ward off the bad fortune. Meanwhile, one of the adventurers approaches to help the fallen hero. The blonde warrior is enraged, unable to comprehend how a C-ranker stole his conqueror title. Filled with hatred, the hero vows he will never forget the name Maron for this. Back in town, the group checks into an inn for some long, overdue rest. Inside, our protagonist starts preparing the dryad flower he collected from the dungeon. He begins carefully slicing the flower, cautious not to damage the core within. With a knife, the knight skillfully extracts the monster's core for cooking. These kernels are fist-sized and resemble a wild variety of chestnut. On their way back, they had encountered an ant and gathered the chestnuts it was carrying. To prepare them, he first removes the tough outer shells, then boils them in hot water to soften them. The peeled chestnuts simmer in a pot, surrounded by bubbling water. While those are cooking, the protagonist combines water and sugar in a separate pot for the syrup. He then brings the mixture to a rolling boil, letting it reduce into a thick, rich syrup. Once the chestnuts are tender, he adds them to the sugar syrup, coating them completely. Using a spoon, our hero drizzles more syrup over the top, ensuring each one is well covered. After they are fully coated, he covers the pot, allowing the sweet treat to rest. He lets the chestnuts cool and repeats this entire process 3 times to achieve the perfect flavor. And with a divine shimmer, our hero's Int Maron Glassa is finally complete. The knight admires the brilliant sugar glaze, pleased with the final result. Without hesitating, he lifts one of the giant chestnuts to his helmet to sample it. Upon tasting it, he's utterly stunned by the explosion of flavor in his mouth. The syrup provides a deep, complex sweetness which the tender chestnut has fully absorbed. He immediately thinks something this delicious shouldn't be eaten alone and decides to share. The elf grumbles but agrees to a taste, seeing as his friend made it so late and was insisting. With a reluctant expression, Dahlia takes a large bite of the chestnut. Upon tasting the treat, the elf is completely taken aback by the burst of flavor. He can't believe a monster's fruit could be so sweet and soft, with a perfectly complementary syrup. Our hero asks if it's good, but an embarrassed Dahlia claims he just isn't used to sweets. He asks for the dish's name, and the knight answers that it's called Manhwa Galaxy. Dahlia finds it odd he'd named the sweet after himself, but Maron clarifies it's the other way around and asks if he enjoyed it. The elf explains his master taught him to suppress his appetite, limiting even simple treats like strawberries. He mentions she was a very stern person and still serves as the captain of the forest guard. Instantly, the protagonist grabs his wrist, speaking his master's name, Rose. He then perfectly describes her a pink-haired elf who wields a spear and has a water attribute. The elf is stunned by this revelation and demands to know how the knight could know all that. Instead of answering, our hero asks if they can travel to his forest the very next day. The scene shifts to the vast Asura forest on the central continent, home to colossal trees. Our hero journeys through the woods, apparently searching for someone he knew long ago. He recalls that Dahlia's master was the best friend of a mage from his former adventuring party. He remembers a mission with a spear-wielding elf, a very uncommon sight. The knight finds it incredible that the very same elf is his new companion's master. He wonders if she would even remember him after so much time has passed. Suddenly, he spots a pink-haired elf and is shocked to recognize her. The woman turns toward him, spear in hand, and fixes him with a serious gaze. She notes his appearance, and the knight asks if she was searching for him in these woods. In a commanding tone, the elf orders the human to state his name immediately. The protagonist introduces himself as Maron, but quickly corrects himself, saying no. He then reveals his true name as Charlotte and greets his old acquaintance, Rose. A smile touches the elf's face, as if she remembers her old friend's name. She chuckles, saying it's been a long time since anyone has called her by that name. Rose asks how he's been, and the knight feels a wave of relief that she remembers. But in an instant, she lunges him with her spear, demanding to know who he truly is. She accuses him of impersonating an old friend to deceive her in the forest. The elf explains that Charlotte was human, and 100 years have passed since they last met. With a steely gaze, she says if he truly is Charlotte, he must tell her what she used to call him. Our hero pauses for a moment, appearing to search his memory for the nickname. In a flashback, a young, red-haired man calls the knight Mr. Charlotte. The young man offers to be the party's shield-bearer, noting that someone so skilled is a rarity. But our hero flatly refuses the offer, though the young man continues to insist. The blonde youth persists, and the knight gives him a stern look. Just then, the elf joins the conversation, suggesting he could meet other races if he joined. At that, the blonde young man invites him to meet his best friend, an elf from the forest. He then introduces the knight to his friend Rose as Mr. Charlotte. The elf appears irritated by the human obsession with her kind, finding it unbelievable. Back in the present, the knight prepares to answer his friend's challenge. In a memory, the knight and the elf are shaking hands and introducing themselves. She finds the name Charlotte too long and posh, deciding she'll call him something different. Returning to the present, our protagonist reveals she called him Char, and the elf is visibly shocked. She wonders if he truly is Charlotte. The voice and build are identical, yet he hasn't aged. The knight adds that he was about 15 years old when they first met so long ago. He even recalls she had a mage friend who hated her sweets and that she used to get letters. A bit sheepishly, he asks her to stop him, feeling he's proven more than enough. The elf studies him with a serious expression, seemingly convinced by his story. She thinks his innocent tone is exactly the same. It really is Char, but she can't understand how. With that, Rose is finally convinced he is her old friend returned after a century. She then tells him to follow her, explaining there's something important she needs to check. Later, inside the elf's cabin, the reflection from our hero's helmet shines in a drinking glass. She apologizes for having nothing to serve, but he assures her it doesn't matter. The knight asks if she lives alone, and Rose explains it simplifies her duty of guarding the forest. He remarks that she hasn't aged a day in 100 years, prompting her to ask why he wears the helmet. Our protagonist replies that he has his reasons, offering no further explanation. At this, the elf asks to see his hand, hoping to understand what is happening. As she holds it, she realizes he hasn't aged either. Time has somehow stopped for him. He then asks if their friend Carlos is also alive and young like him. With a sorrowful look, the elf reveals that not only Carlos but everyone else is gone. She is the group's sole survivor. The knight understands, noting that after a century, any humans would have naturally passed on. The elf admits that, honestly, she had assumed all of her old friends were long gone. She explains that after becoming an adventurer, her only contact with Carlos was through letters. But then, the replies ceased and she heard nothing from him for 20 years. Following that, his party, Romancha, disappeared without a single trace. Rose says that while mercenaries vanishing wasn't unheard of, it was major news for a team as strong as theirs. She couldn't accept it and held out hope for news, but too much time passed. For that reason, she's more stunned than happy and asks how he lived without aging. Our protagonist says her name, preparing to tell his old friend the whole truth. He reminds her of the rare item she acquired the last time they partied together. It was the Arachnophobia skill book which they obtained from the Spider Queen, Regina Rana. Rose remembers that he was their group's only appraiser and identified the item for her. Placing a hand on his chest, the knight states that item is precisely why he is still alive. And with a dark expression, he reveals it's also why his former companions are gone. The scene flashes back 100 years to a verdant forest under a setting sun. The protagonist's former party is facing a horde of goblins with furious red eyes. The knight defends with his shield as the monsters swarm forward to attack. His companions are startled by the creatures, wondering what they are. Their party leader orders Charlotte to hold the front line while the others attack. Our protagonist plants his shield firmly, protecting everyone from the goblin onslaught. The group's archer knocks a glowing arrow, preparing to unleash a wide area attack. Following this, a shower of light descends upon the monsters, wiping out several at once. The leader calls out to Carlos, and the mage confirms he is ready to cast his fire spell. A massive wall of flame incinerates the goblins, who shriek from the intense attack. After the dust clears, the monsters' bodies litter the ground, and the knight feels something is off. The archer complains that their client lied, as the area is teeming with strange monsters. One suggests retreating, but the leader insists this is no joke, concluding their intel was flowed. With a grim and worried look, another companion agrees the situation is dire. Suddenly, a cloaked figure appears, complaining that they've destroyed her creations. The archer flinches, and the knight steps in front to shield her from the mysterious figure. The leader notes something is strange about her and tells everyone to stay ready for a fight. She identifies herself as an adventurer and declares the forest off-limits to outsiders. The figure states they irritate her, and the group is horrified to realize they were test subjects. Brandishing a sharp claw, the person claims they interrupted her sacred forest ritual. As she throws back the hood, a creature covered in lizard-like scales is revealed to the party. The knight wonders about its race, sensing something is deeply wrong. He quickly uses his appraisal skill and is horrified to discover the creature belongs to the dragon race. Without a second thought, our protagonist throws himself in front of his friends to shield them. The scene cuts back to the present with the knight and Rose in her forest cabin. He is lost in the memory and suddenly speaks the full name of his fallen friend. Back in the fight, the knight is sent flying into a tree by the creature's powerful blow. He slumps to the ground, wounded, as his companions cry out his name in concern. The dragon scoffs, declaring she will use them as offerings for her sacred ritual. The leader orders everyone to prepare for battle, telling Demian to heal Charlotte. With a smirk, the creature says that even insects deserve to know who crushes them. She then introduces herself as the Golden Dragon, the apex of draconic intellect. The mage is terrified by this, and the leader warns everyone to be vigilant, as she is incredibly powerful. Carlos realizes they must flee and decides to use a spell to blind her, buying them time. But in an instant, a claw bursts through his chest, and the mage collapses gone. The archer screams her friend's name as the dragon mocks a human for daring to use magic on her. Enraged, the young woman fires an arrow toward the beast to avenge her friend. But the dragon dodges effortlessly and counters with a fatal strike, taking her down instantly. The party's leader is in shock, unable to see or even hear the creature's attack. She finally grasps how powerful a dragon can be and the immense danger they face. With wide, terrified eyes, the leader despairs, wondering what they could possibly do. She glances at her fallen comrades, seeing they can barely hold on. The leader thinks Demian's area of effect heal could save them, but he would need time. With that, the group's priest decides to draw the dragon's attention to create an opening. Their leader turns to the creature, asking what a dragon is doing in a place like this. With a malevolent glare, the dragon reveals her sole desire, the resurrection of the Demon King. She explains that as the Golden Dragon, she received a revelation about the world's future. To purify the world, the blight known as humanity must be utterly eradicated. But one being realized this before she did, the Demon King, who dedicated his life to this cause. The dragon confesses she fell in love with the powerful man and will be his queen upon his return. With glowing eyes, she proclaims herself the Golden Dragon who fell for the Demon King. She then reintroduces herself as the Savior Mad Dragon and prepares an all-out assault. The priest thinks she's completely unhinged, but her rambling bought them the time they needed. He's about to cast the area heal, planning to grab everyone and make a safe escape. But without warning, the dragon appears and strikes him down, her claw piercing his chest. The leader screams his name as the creature mocks him for thinking she wouldn't see through their ruse. Furious, the warrior charges with her sword, aiming to strike the dragon and avenge her friend. Using one of her claws, the creature conjures a blade of purple energy to defend herself. In a single swift motion, she defeats the leader, who crumples to the ground, unable to fight. The dragon laughs, saying they fall like insects, and threatens to use them as her next test subjects. Our protagonist knows they can't win, everyone will be eliminated if he doesn't do something. But then he remembers the skill book, thinking he could use it to create an opportunity. A red glint appears in his eyes as the knight activates the arachnophobia skill. A message then notifies him that the assimilation debuff is activating within his body. But a moment later, the message changes, stating the debuff has been successfully dispelled. At this, our protagonist wonders what just happened and why he hasn't turned into a monster. The hero is horrified to see a severed arm on the ground, confused about what has transpired. He questions what he's seeing and why the daytime sky has suddenly become a full moon night. All at once, he spots a skull dangling from a giant spider leg and recoils in fear. With eyes wide with terror, the young man whips his head around in a state of pure panic. He then realizes the horrifying truth: he has transformed into a monster, half human and half giant spider.